Moses was a shepherd in Midian, leading his father-in-law's sheep through quiet hills and dusty paths. Day after day he wandered the rugged landscape, guiding his flock with patience and care, his life marked by routine and solitude. He knew every rock and stream, living a peaceful, simple life. The gentle bleating of sheep and the whisper of the wind were his constant companions, and the world seemed unchanged, predictable. One day he led his flock to Mount Horeb, the mountain of God, a place shrouded in ancient stories and quiet mystery. Suddenly he saw a bush on fire, but it wasn't burning up. The sight was so unexpected that Moses stopped in his tracks, unable to look away. The flames danced, but the bush stayed green and whole. Not a single leaf was scorched, and the branches remained untouched by the fire. Moses stared in awe, drawn to this mysterious sight. His heart raced. As he tried to understand what he was witnessing, he thought, I must go closer and see why the bush isn't burning. Curiosity overcame his fear, and he stepped forward, compelled by wonder. As he approached, the air felt different, holy, pure. A sense of reverence washed over him, as if he had entered sacred ground. Moses sensed this was no ordinary fire. It was unlike anything he had ever seen or felt before. It was a sign, something powerful and divine. The light from the bush seemed to glow with a purpose beyond human understanding. He stood still, heart pounding, waiting to see what would happen next. Every sense was heightened, every moment stretched. The quiet of the mountain was broken by this wonder. The silence seemed to listen, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Moses realized this moment would change his life forever. He felt the weight of destiny settling upon his shoulders. He was just a shepherd, but now he stood before a miracle. The ordinary had become extraordinary in a single moment. The bush burned with a light not of this world. Its glow seemed to reach into Moses' soul, calling him to listen. Moses waited, ready for whatever came next. He knew he was standing at the edge of something greater than himself. The sheep grazed nearby, unaware of the extraordinary event. Life for them continued as always, but for Moses, everything had changed. Moses felt both fear and curiosity. The unknown beckoned him, and he could not turn away. He knew deep down that this was a turning point. The path ahead was uncertain, but he was ready to listen. The mountain, once familiar, had become a place of destiny, a sacred ground where the ordinary met the divine, and Moses' journey would never be the same. As Moses stood before the burning bush, the air around him shimmered with an otherworldly light, and the silence of the desert was broken by a voice unlike any he had ever heard. A voice called out, "Moses! Moses!" The sound was powerful, yet filled with a deep compassion that seemed to reach into Moses' very soul. Startled, Moses replied, "Here I am." His heart pounded as he waited for what would come next, unsure but compelled to listen. The voice said, "Do not come any closer. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." Moses felt the weight of those words, realizing he was in the presence of something sacred. Moses obeyed, removing his sandals and bowing low, realizing he was in the presence of God himself. The voice continued, "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." These names echoed through Moses' memory, connecting him to his ancestors and their faith. Overwhelmed by awe and fear, Moses hid his face, afraid to look at God, trembling at the magnitude of the moment. God said, "I have seen the suffering of my people in Egypt. I have heard their cries." The pain of his people was not forgotten. Their prayers had reached heaven. "I have come down to rescue them from the Egyptians and bring them to a good and spacious land flowing with milk and honey." This promise was more than words. It was hope for a new beginning. God's words were a promise of hope and freedom, a vision of a future where suffering would end. Moses listened, overwhelmed by the gravity of the moment, feeling the responsibility settle upon his shoulders. God revealed his plan to save the Israelites, entrusting Moses with a mission that would change history. "You, Moses, will be part of this plan." The words rang with both challenge and invitation, calling Moses to step into his destiny. The burning bush was not just a sign, it was a call to action, a moment that demanded courage and faith. Moses realized he was chosen for something far greater than tending sheep. His ordinary life was about to become extraordinary. God's voice was both commanding and compassionate, offering guidance and reassurance in equal measure. The promise of a new home for the Israelites was clear, a land where they could live in peace and abundance. Moses stood in awe, knowing his life would never be the same. The encounter marked the beginning of a journey that would test his faith and courage. The mountain echoed with the promise of deliverance, its silence now filled with the weight of God's words. God's presence filled Moses with both fear and hope, a mixture of emotions that would guide him in the days to come. The journey of a nation was about to begin, and Moses would lead them, forever changed by the message from the burning bush. God gave Moses a daunting mission. Go to Pharaoh and bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. Moses was stunned. He was just a shepherd, not a leader. Who am I to do this? He asked. God replied, I will be with you. Even with this promise, Moses worried. What if they ask who sent me? God answered, tell them, I am has sent me to you. This name meant God was eternal and ever-present. Moses now had authority and a message. He was to speak for the God of their ancestors. The task was overwhelming, but God's presence was his strength. Moses was given a divine purpose. He would go not in his own power, but with God's. The shepherd was now a messenger. Moses accepted the call, trusting in God's promise. He was ready to face Pharaoh, armed with faith. The journey from the mountain to Egypt would change history. Moses stepped forward, no longer just a shepherd, but a leader chosen by God. Moses obeyed God and returned to Egypt with his brother Aaron. Together they entered Pharaoh's grand palace. Standing before the powerful king, Aaron spoke, This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says, let my people go. Pharaoh was unmoved and angry. Who is the Lord that I should obey him? He refused, seeing the Israelites as his slaves. Instead of freedom, Pharaoh made their work even harder. The Israelites' hope seemed crushed. Moses and Aaron stood firm, repeating God's demand. Pharaoh's heart grew harder and he mocked their God. The king's pride blinded him to the truth. The Israelites suffered more, but Moses did not give up. God's message was clear, but Pharaoh would not listen. The stage was set for a dramatic confrontation. Moses' courage was tested, but he remembered God's promise. The struggle for freedom had begun. Pharaoh's refusal would bring consequences. The fate of a nation hung in the balance. Pharaoh's heart was hard, so God sent plagues upon Egypt. The Nile turned to blood, fish died, and the people suffered. Frogs, gnats, and flies invaded every home. Each time Pharaoh promised to let the Israelites go, but broke his word. Disease struck livestock, boils afflicted people, and hail destroyed crops. Locusts devoured what was left, and darkness covered the land. Yet Pharaoh remained stubborn, refusing to free the Israelites. God warned of a final, terrible plague, the death of every firstborn in Egypt. The Israelites were told to mark their doors with lamb's blood. The angel of death would pass over their homes, sparing their children. This night became known as Passover. The final plague would break Pharaoh's pride. Egypt's suffering grew unbearable. God's power was undeniable, but Pharaoh resisted. The Israelites waited, trusting in God's promise of deliverance. The moment of freedom was near. After the devastating final plague, Pharaoh's resolve finally broke. He summoned Moses and, with a heavy heart, told him, "Go, leave my people." The Israelites' long-awaited freedom had come at last. The Israelites hurriedly gathered their belongings, taking only what they could carry. With hope and uncertainty mingling in their hearts, they left Egypt behind, setting out on foot as a great multitude. God led them on their journey toward the Red Sea, guiding them with a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. These signs reminded them that they were not alone, even in the vast wilderness. But soon, Pharaoh's heart hardened once more. Regretting his decision, he gathered his army and set out in pursuit, determined to bring the Israelites back. The Israelites soon found themselves trapped, an impassable sea before them, and Pharaoh's army closing in from behind. Fear and panic swept through the people as they realized their desperate situation. In their distress, they cried out to Moses, feeling utterly hopeless and afraid for their lives. But Moses reassured them, saying, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Lord will fight for you." God then instructed Moses to stretch out his staff over the sea, promising a way through the impossible. A mighty wind began to blow, parting the waters and creating a dry path right through the heart of the sea. The Israelites crossed safely, walking between towering walls of water on either side, amazed at the miracle before them. Pharaoh's army followed them into the sea, but God caused confusion and chaos among the Egyptians. Once the Israelites were safely across, Moses stretched out his hand over the sea once more. The waters crashed back into place, overwhelming Pharaoh's army and drowning every last one of them. Not a single Egyptian survived. The sea returned to its calm, erasing all trace of the pursuers. The Israelites stood on the far shore, overwhelmed with relief and joy. They were finally free. In awe and gratitude they gave thanks to God, who had delivered them in a truly miraculous way. Their journey to a new life had truly begun, as they stepped forward into the unknown, trusting in God's promise. The Israelites stood in awe on the far shore, safe at last. They had witnessed a miracle. God had parted the sea for them. Moses led them in a song of praise, celebrating their deliverance. The people rejoiced, their fear replaced by faith. God had shown his power over nature and nations. The memory of slavery faded as hope grew. The journey ahead would be long, but they were no longer alone. God's presence was with them, guiding each step. The Red Sea crossing became a symbol of freedom. The Israelites learned to trust God in the impossible. Moses emerged as a true leader, chosen and empowered by God. The people's faith was tested and strengthened. Their escape was not just physical, but spiritual. They were a people set apart, chosen for a purpose. The story of their deliverance would be told for generations. God's promise was unfolding before their eyes. The desert awaited, but so did a new beginning. The miracle at the sea marked the dawn of a nation. After 3 months in the desert, the Israelites reached Mount Sinai. God called Moses up the mountain to receive his laws. The people prepared themselves, treating the mountain as holy. Thunder, lightning, and a thick cloud signaled God's presence. Moses entered the cloud, and God gave him the 10 Commandments. These laws taught the people how to love God and each other. They were written on 2 stone tablets by God himself. The commandments became the foundation of their new society. Moses brought the laws down to the people. The Israelites now had a guide for living as God's chosen nation. The covenant at Sinai marked a new chapter in their journey. Moses came down from Sinai, his face shining with God's glory. He shared the 10 Commandments with the Israelites. The people promised, "Everything the Lord has said, we will do." This was the beginning of their identity as God's nation. Though challenges remained, they now had God's laws to guide them. Moses' faith and courage inspired the people. God's miracles and promises gave them hope. The journey from slavery to freedom was a testament to faith. The 10 Commandments offered a vision for a just and holy community. With God's guidance, the Israelites moved toward a new future. Their story became a beacon of hope for generations to come.